call the meeting to order for the 1856 Academy Rebuilding Committee. And the first thing is the minutes from March 10th, 2025.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I will second that.
All those in favor of approval? Just make the notes of who's here. Since I have to do two things at once, I have to make sure I get it all down.
You take the.
Of what?
Wing.
Mudwing. What did I write? What did I write?
Ludwig or something.
Oh, did it?
You gotta.
Oh, an N in there. How did that happen?
It's been there forever, but
Has it?
I never.
I've just been copying, so I will, I will
You're
fix
by a
that.
school teacher.
I know. Some names are, at least I ought to get my act together with that, so. All right. And. What happens when you copy and edit the notes from before, because I do that a lot. The most of it I just copy and go in and edit. So, okay, project status update and budget. So. Oh, and there's Nate, so perfect.
Go. My only update is that we've been going back and forth. Nate and I have, she sent a submittal about the railing in the front, which I'm sure he'll be able to update us on. I just saw, Nate, that you sent something back, like 10 minutes ago.
Yep.
So I haven't checked that out yet, but.
It's just, they made those corrections, that one correction to that plate.
Okay, was that bend an incorrect angle?
Yeah, he said he said he could have gone either way with it, depending upon what he got for a circumference, but he's fine with it. That particular plate that you're looking at, that degree, that was the bend where it meets the column. That's where it hits the radius of that column.
Okay.
And lags. So it was a little tricky because when you look at that, you almost want to think it's the railing like this in this angle.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? But it's this angle here against the column. So he says it was. He says actually he laughed. He says it was about halfway. So he goes, it was really close, but he made the correction. He goes, it's going to work fine.
Okay, great.
I just wanted to submit it just so for record, you guys haven't approved. It's just that's what's being fabricated. So
Yeah, I'll send that back along. No problem. And then if you want to talk about the strapping stuff, I approved that one as well. That was for all three levels. Do you think that you'll take off the strapping in the main level and when you go to insulate, you'll restrap, or you?
Those questions, the RFIs on that, what they had to deal with is one of the things when we were actually all there on site, walking around, noted was there's a lot of stuff that's sticking out, like the nails, and it was kind of a ragged, the insulator had noticed it. And down on site, what we looked at is we have the strapping that had these little tiny nails. And Steve, I don't know if he's there, I can't see, but he knows those little tiny labs have number 4 cut nails. And what it does is it creates an absolute mess, and there's little tiny nails all the way across the strapping. And rather than going through and trying to clean up that strapping, you're a lot faster just to pull the strapping down and get rid of it. And you have just joists and rafters left. So the basement was really kind of hodgepodge and patchy with that strapping. Of course, as you noted too on there too, Andrew, they had nailed that strapping parallel with the cord, the bottom of the joist, so it's really irrelevant. So versus pulling, say 1,000 nails out, you pull like 10. You know what I'm saying? And it pulls that whole strapping down. So upstairs in the back, and I'm calling it the back, not the assembly area, but in the back, that strapping was sort of patchy all over the place. And so Dave asked the question, I figured I'd run it by you, that we're just going to pull those pieces down. And we're just making sure that was okay with you guys, because it's going to be simple. And I think you had noticed this in your response. You had noted this in your response that It's gonna be easier if they go with a fiberglass or they go with like a cheesecloth and blown in. It's a lot easier and faster for the insulator to do that.
Yes.
Without no strapping there. Obviously, when the finishes get applied, whether it be drywall or whatever they do for, finishes on the ceiling, the correct way to do it is to strap it. First. So that, and in the attic as well. So there's 3 different levels up in the attic as well. This has nothing to do with the assembly area, and that sagging plaster. I know that, I think it was Kristen that had mentioned that. That's sort of a separate item.
Yeah.
Just to eliminate the confusion in that. So, anyways, I can transition right into that and talk about that. You know, my goal right now is knowing that we have a cap money-wise. We have a set budget. We have goals that we have to meet, knowing that the plaster is a top priority and correcting that, but probably before that, making sure that bell tower is assembled, 100% complete. Any issues with the roof are resolved, and that kind of stuff are sort of there first. So I'm really sort of honing down, letting these costs come in to make sure that the bell tower is complete. I just received some pricing and stuff, some unit pricing from the crane. And I know that Wade had reached out and was in communication with Cody Crane. They have agreed to come. They've already showed up to our shop and they visited the site just to review it, to see the correct machine, get the sizing right. And I know Wade's talked to them about pricing, you know, his pricing structure and being involved. And I do know that when I spoke to the gentleman who showed up here, his name was Leo. He said they're selecting their brand new crane. They're nice cranes. It's a smaller one, but it's going to look nice for the photos and the event when it happens. You're not going to have some grease-ridden monstrosity, you know, black smoke, and it's going to look nice for that particular event. And the sizing will be right. So we're just right now just fine-tuning the you know, the weight of it, making sure that we get the layout correct. And do it safely and well, is what we're working on right now. As far as the status on the bell tower rebuild, we have the bell tower, the lead coated copper work is complete. We're just fine-tuning some flashing around the columns on the, I'm going to call it the bell deck, which is where the bell cradle and the bell actually sits. We are probably by the end of the day tomorrow will be 100% complete with all the roofing flashing work and hopefully done with all the AZEK trim and stuff on that. Our goal right now is end of this week or beginning of the following week, not Thursday, Friday, maybe Monday, transport those modules, those individual components down to site, get them down to site and unloaded, and start the process of getting the building ready to receive that. When the crane operator had visited the site, one of the things that him and I were looking at is road postings to see if that's going to limit us. The crane, the weight of the crane does exceed the road posting right now, and Academy Road is posted. The sign does say that the road posting gets lifted May 1st. So that's generally our target we're looking at is the first week of May. To actually set it. In the meantime, we're getting those components down to site because we do not exceed the weight limit with those items, and start assembling that down on site, and getting that prepped and ready. So I will mention too, one of the items that has been mentioned and talked about like last meeting, as well as I've seen some correspondence going back and forth as far as the tree prep work, the tree damage work and that kind of stuff done, is I think Kristen, I'd seen an email between everybody saying that the committee has hired a tree cutter to clear the site.
They're done. They're
done.
gone. The
Nice.
pines are gone.
Yep. So we looked at it, we went up, looked in the attic, looked at the roof, looked at some of the damage, and I'm confident that we'll fit this in under the GMP, no problem. The work is relatively minor to get the repairs done. We have some of the items that were concerning is the trim is obviously a custom trim.
Yes.
So we bought the knives. The mill worker did have to purchase knives and be able to set up and do that kind of work, but there was a certain amount of attic stock that's currently on site. So we will be using that attic stock to make some of the repairs. with that crown molding and stuff, and depending upon it probably, I'm guessing, would be a very good idea to have extra attic stock available, just for any future damage or something to repair some of the crown molding. We can talk about that later. I don't believe we'll use all of the attic stock, but depending upon what exactly is on site, it might be a good idea once the repairs are complete to make sure that we have at least, say, one piece of each type in attic stock would be wise.
Yeah.
No structural damage. Rafters were not hurt in any way. So we're probably into maybe a bundle of shingles, and I would be surprised if we're more than 3 man-days into it to make the fix. So I don't think that's anything too substantial. I think the original question was, does this warrant a like an insurance claim or that sort of thing? I don't, in my opinion, I don't think so. I think maybe what are paid out, the difference of the premiums, or just the hassle of getting the paperwork back and forth might be more than what it's worth. I can produce an estimate for review.
I don't think we need to do that because I don't think it went into effect until March 20th. And that happened before March 20th.
Gotcha. Now there is there's a builder's risk in place of some sort, correct? My understanding is that there's a builder risk that's in place, or some sort of insurance as far as that.
Yes, it went into place March 20th. So.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, and the only thing I've noticed in coming up here a couple of times since we initially saw that damage is we've had some wind. So I think there's some pieces kind of that are flopping around that weren't originally flopping around.
Shingles.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
As roof systems, especially an asphalt roof system, how they work is they're together as a unit. And once you
Yes.
open up that unit.
yes,
there's room to be
exactly.
able to go. I had Dave down on site early this week, and he didn't mention like 3 square are now missing.
No, that hasn't happened. I compared my picture I originally sent you to what it looked like now, and it looked like some things have blown a little bit since then. So, and yes, I've picked up plenty of shingles and from being stripped from roofs, so I know how it works, but luckily the pines are gone and hopefully we won't be holding our breath every time that we have a big windstorm anymore, so.
No, we went up and crawled around the attic with flashlights and looked at the timbers and looked at, the wall to see if anything, that's really what your major concern would be.
Yes,
Like that,
yes.
something happened to the brick or something happened to, rafter timbers or that kind of thing. And it's very, minuscule. He goes,
Yeah.
some barn boards that are underneath of that plywood are broken a little bit in that area, but very easily repaired.
Yeah,
Especially
yeah,
when
we
you're looking
were extremely lucky.
Yeah.
And that when that came down and dragged along the building, it didn't do anything to the window. And how it didn't do anything to the window, I don't know.
Well, the window, I think there's a basement window right there too, so it's sort of.
Well,
landed
yeah.
between- Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, we were, if anything good has happened to us through the project, that was it, so.
So I know Dave also went down to site. He has some material for the handrail back, and we're gonna put a pressure treated handrail along that foundation wall just to take care of that insurance item. On the very back of the building where that drop is. Put up just a pressure treated handrail. We're gonna pin it with some wedge bolts right to the concrete as a sort of interim handrail, for a safety thing. You know what I'm talking about out back.
Yep.
Where the drop is. So we'll take care of that. I'm not sure at this point, this might be a conversation that I can have with Steve, I think on site, once we get the insulator lined up to go ahead and look at it, to look at what we're gonna do for like an attic hatch or something right there. I mean, what we're thinking about doing for a hatch just to keep that heat up in that ladder hole right there. We could look at that on site to see if we had, because we're going to keep the building and insulate it, we need to close up that hatches to some degree. So Have we heard anything back from the insulator on that or?
I sent you his contact.
I've left
Yeah.
a couple voicemails for him and haven't got a reply.
Okay, I can text him again too, because
Yeah,
I'll text him again and.
I called him twice,
Okay.
left voicemails and didn't get a reply.
So we're looking to more or less, probably end of this week, Steve, starting next week, having a larger presence on site. So it'll work out good as we approach this, early May, date, the first week May. Anytime that he gets back to you, we can be on site and look at that. And obviously, waiting to get my, man lift on site until it makes sense as we get closer to that point. So we don't have a man lift just sitting down there, you know, being billed out,
Yeah.
paying for not doing anything, so. So that's on the docket too. So I'm working on that, you know, now that we're gonna have more of a presence on site, this week. And have a really good sense of the cost of the bell tower, because it's largely all these components and pieces sort of like coming together. Having a better understanding of the budget, and now saying, okay, here's what we actually have zeroed in left to look at, repairing that ceiling, getting that ceiling repaired in the assembly. I'm gonna call it the assembly area. I'm not really sure what it's called, but the main assembly area, and make sure we get that tied into this particular phasing of the work. So that's generally my report. And I didn't know if anybody had more questions or.
I have one question. When I wanted to try to get a sense of when we thought we could turn off the Renais to
Yeah.
save that part, so.
Yep. I would think that we're just about there. I mean, generally speaking, trying to avoid freezing temperatures,
Yeah.
cold freezing temperatures. And I think Steve might have a really good sense of this too, but we've just had a couple like 23-degree nights, but
Yes.
I would say within the next week or two, we're gonna be getting some much warmer temperatures,
Yeah.
for sure. I know the one of the items we're working up and wrapping up is getting the door hardware 100%. We had a couple nudgy things that we had to complete on site, and Dave's been down there working on that, so.
And is that something that if you're here on site, we'll have you turn them off or you?
Flip the switch.
Okay,
Yeah.
because I haven't been in there since, you know, they were, maybe
Yeah,
I've been in
there's
once,
just
but
a- Should be just an on off switch on the
Yeah.
top, just turn them off. That's
yeah,
all you'll have to do.
Yep, next time we're down on site, either tomorrow, Wednesday, something like that, next month site, we'll just flip the switch. If they're still running when we get there, we'll turn them off.
yeah. And if you think we've got some, the weather's been so crazy the past couple of weeks, you know?
Yeah. I don't think there's nothing in the building that talks of, you know, that would lend it for like, you know, water or something really
Yeah.
super sensitive.
Yeah,
There's no electronics, you know, that kind of
No.
thing. So,
okay,
I think generally speaking, the heat is just trying to keep the building from,
yes,
misbehaving.
yeah.
So Nate, besides responding to that submittal, do you need anything from me currently?
No, I think we're all caught up. Those handrails are in fabrication. One of the things that I am gonna be working on here, with LMC is I have some steel brackets. I'm calling them steel brackets. They're 1/2-inch steel plates, that I'm gonna be using to connect the new, bell tower to the existing tower framing beneath the roof railing. So as you guys know, that, you know, those 8x8 timbers were cut off down below the roof line and cut off flush. And the new ones will be shiplapped into those. And my concept is to take some 1/2-inch steel plates and 1-inch threaded rod and bolts in a series and bolt those two plates and sandwich the shiplap together. So 3-foot plate by 8 inches wide, 2 of them on each post to bolt them together. And I also have I've been talking with Dave on, I can't remember who it was. Maybe it was Steve or Kristen when we were on site. There's some headers, some timbers and diagonals that are up in there, that we want to preserve and keep. You know, there's some, people's names and stuff carved into it over time. So I want to kind of preserve that up in the structure. So we're gonna obviously have to cut those off from where they are. And then the steel plates, I'm gonna build in such a way that to receive, and actually use those timbers again to reinforce what's there. Now, in talking with Steve Burton, he had said something about an engineer being involved to review what's been done. Do you know anything about this, Andrew, or have a contact or know anybody, or is that just a dollar amount that's in the budget just to have someone sign off on what we've done? Do you know anything about that, or?
I don't believe we'll need any specific special inspections, so like to have an engineer sign off on the finalization of construction, I don't think is necessary. If we need to review anything, we do have a structural engineer that reviewed the project, Eric Doobie, but I don't believe he intends on visiting unless he's requested. So if we wanted to come up there, we'll just schedule a time with him. But
This was just in passing, talking with Steve. I'm trying to remember the conversation, because I think there's a dollar amount that's in the GMP for that. And I said, oh, so are we gonna get an engineered design so I can build it? And he's like, no, but he'll tell you if you did it wrong. I'm like, oh, okay, so it's a test, pass, fail. So overbuild it. Okay, I love overbuilding it. Well, obviously these, I'm gonna call them plates or brackets, the fabrication of them, it's just 1/2-inch plate steel. And just, the position of those, we're just gonna have some shop drawings to look at. And then obviously, I don't know if there's a review necessary for when we reattach that, for someone to review that and look at it. Because this is all just carpenter common sense, looking at it, overbuilding it.
right.
Looking at what was there and make sure what goes back is much more rugged than what was there.
I can certainly have him look over the shop drawings, anything that's being fabricated, and maybe if you have a sketch of, what you're planning on doing, and just have him sign off on it versus, building it wrong, so to speak, having him come to site and say, nope. And then we get charged for his visit, you've got to rebuild it, et cetera, et cetera. So
Gotcha.
that's probably,
Okay, so I'll submit what I have, and you're gonna have to brace because it's my hand drawing with a rule, scale drawing with some notes on it, just so we can keep track of it between me and Dave. And a sketch or a drawing is much easier to communicate specifics than saying, what do you think about that? But when I get these LMC, I'll have them make up some shop drawings and just send them over with these plates, and we can definitely do that. If it's going to be a case where we could do a Zoom call, maybe, so I can walk him through what we're doing with some pictures and some stuff. And we'll get a sense, I think, maybe from him to say, you guys are nuts or not. So I'm pretty confident that we're definitely on the overbuilt track. But it would be good to get a sense from him and have him give his blessing on it.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah, just let me know when you're ready for that, and I'll schedule something with Eric. He's from Trillium Engineering, if you've worked with them before.
I'll probably just submit a submittal on it, and then we'll just go from there. Once you download the documents and stuff, then we'll go from there. So
sounds good.
Okay. Is there any other specifics? So if we have today's meeting, and you guys usually meet the first week thereabouts of the month, so I'm thinking probably the next time we meet, maybe on site.
That sounds good.
I think, Kristen, you had mentioned I think it was you who asked the question, maybe it was Dawn, about what we thought timeline was to begin scheduling and begin sort of lining something up. As of right now, we know it's going to be sometime first week May.
Okay.
And Cody Crane, who was a concern of mine, make sure we can fit within their timeline. I'm talking with Dave this morning. I think it's a pretty firm date. We can actually pick a day here as we get closer and go from there. Maybe about 2 weeks out, maybe about a couple of weeks, we can just firm that up a little bit.
Yeah, that sounds good. As you have those conversations with them, just CC me in the email if you're emailing them.
Yep.
And then, I don't think I have anything too exciting. That week is, the week of May 5th is pretty open for me, so.
Nate, how long do you think it's gonna take to set the bell tower in place?
Timeline, like on site?
Yeah, because are you gonna have to do those notches once you have it all assembled? And lift it up
So-
there and try it, or what's your game plan?
So my game plan is I'm gonna take them out on Iwo Jima and then we'll plant the flag with you guys after. That's the plan. So right now I've discussed this with Cody Crane and just said, obviously to think that, I mean, I have no reservations that it's gonna come off without a hitch and be able to go together, but there's always the possibility of an unforeseen something or whatever that might, hitch up, just a very smooth placement. So as of right now, we're looking at one mobilization, 2 days. So we'll get there in the afternoon, noontime, the day before, get everything set up. We're gonna lift it up in the air. They'll have an LMI, which is a load moment indicator, to be able to just verify the weight of the crane and the angle and everything. We'll pick it up in the air and place it where it has to go, just place it, look at it, go, yeah, okay, everything's perfect. Then we'll take it back off. We'll set it back on the trailer on the ground when we have it staged or whatever. And then temporarily cap it for the night. Come back in the morning of the event, open everything up, get ready to go. People start coming, so we'll be able to do that one motion of lifting and placing smoothly without having done it before. I don't think it'll take that long, Steve. So if we're at that point and we know where rigging's gonna be, we know that our timbers are gonna be. I don't see us like bolting it and going nuts and coming around the building and just for the event. My thought was just to lift it and place it for the event. And then obviously we'll continue to work on the inside, getting stuff together or whatever, but for the event itself, I see it just lifting and being set back down. People applaud, yay, it went down, the crane gets off, generally that's what I see happening. Obviously we'll continue to work that day to make sure it's safe up in place, slide the timbers out. So I think last time you were here at our shop, Steve, we looked at this in those diagonals where the arches are in the actual where the bell is. We're going to be putting some probably 6x8s or something like that through those diagonals and running them out past. The crane will have a spreader bar that comes over and picks it from 2 points. From the spreader bar, go down to 4 points and pick the entire thing up that way. That's how the crane operator wanted to handle it. He seems to think we can have the spire and everything assembled. I'd rather not. I'd rather go up there at a separate trip and place the spire after the cables and the spreader bar are out of the way, because it is 6.5 feet tall, 7 feet tall, something like that. So, so I would say that we're going to place it, bolt it. My plates will be designed such a way that we can run some RSS screws through it and hold it, and then go and start working our way out of there with a man basket, sliding those 2 timbers out onto the man basket, take it to the ground. And then there's going to be some trim that needs to be placed after, obviously covering up those spots. There'll be a little bit of trim work transitioning from where the bottom of the belfry tower, the base, as it comes up off the peak of the roof. There'll be some trim that we have to just transition between the actual bell deck framing and that. I've left myself some wiggle room, if it were, for the placement of that. So we'll end up putting some AZEK trim on that. So there'll be some work that will be done after the bell tower is placed, but very minimal. So the whole bell tower, the upper part, the ceiling, everything will be done. The cradle will be inside, the bell will be inside. Once it's up in place, like I said, a little bit of trim work around that, getting that rope and pulley system fine-toothed, weaving that back to the building. We'll probably do at a later point. And we may even have enough so that we can get it up there and then ring the bell, just for, the novelty of it within the event, get it up there, then ring the bell. That might be something that people would appreciate and enjoy, kind of culminating the whole project coming up and then that bell ringing again. So. It's
Sounds well thought out.
Yeah. That would be great.
Perfect. Okay, that's most of what I have. Like I said, I'm gonna be working on those shop drawings with LMC for those brackets, Andrew, and I'll get them back to you to take a look at, and we can go from there. Just as far as a documented record to make sure what we're doing is looked at well. in case if there's any insurance concerns or something like that, we'll have our bases covered for sure.
Sounds good.
Very good. Steve, once you know roughly when you're thinking about the insulator coming to site, just reach out, let me know, and we can meet on site whenever it's convenient the next 2-3 weeks. So,
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thanks, Nate.
thank you.
Do you have anything else, Andrew?
Nope,
No?
I think most of the things are in his court unless he asks me a question at this point.
Okay,
Which we've been going back and forth on a couple of things that we just talked about.
yeah, yeah. That sounds good. So,
Excellent.
if that's all on that, then the next thing to go over, I think Dawn did this spreadsheet before she left, and then there were a couple other bills from Fabian, so I think that Fabian Oil line is a little bit different, but she didn't have, you know, her personal computer. She has the spreadsheet on to make any changes, so there's probably a little bit of difference there in what we have left, so. In our remaining balance, so it's probably more in the vicinity of 96,000, so. That's what we have left there. And she's the spreadsheet master. I leave that up to her.
That doesn't cover the cost of the bell tower and all of it.
No, because that hasn't been expended yet, so there's 96,000 left to do the bell tower and hopefully insulation.
Hopefully whatever insulation we can get done with
Yeah.
that.
And then the handrails will go on there too, because those are, you know, haven't been charged out to, because they're not in place yet, so. And so for monthly invoices, we have Paul Design this month for $287.50.
I move we accept that for payment.
So. Yeah, or Steve has made a motion, Doug has seconded. All those in favor of approving the invoices? Perfect. Nickerson and O'Day. That this month is $10,202.37, and that is labor. Alton Buck, who is doing the roofing, I think that's the fellow who's doing the dome cladding, right? And then project management, and then tools, equipment, and for that total of $10,202.37.
I'll make a motion to pay that.
Go ahead. I'll second that. We're fighting over Larry.
All those in favor of paying Nickerson and O'Day, perfect. And then Fabian, the total we have, I had asked Justin to look at that because it started out as one price per gallon on the propane, and then it switched to something else. So our contract with them had ended, so the price changed. So the total for Fabian is $1,059.14.
Make
I
a
think it's
motion
like
we
6 weeks
pay
worth.
that.
So,
I'll second that.
all those in favor of paying Fabian? Perfect. So, that's why I like wanted to shut the heat off this.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully the weather will behave.
You know, Kevin Maddox on,
Oh, yeah.
he always said April is the winter month.
Yes, well, hopefully it doesn't get too wintry. Yeah, we had some pretty cold nights there a couple weeks and last week too, but fundraising, you know, the hits keep coming. Libra, we got a denial from Libra on the 31st, so Libra said no. But I haven't garnered any donations this month. The new Monmouth Messenger went out and I had the throws in there, so that hopefully maybe some people will see that haven't before and known that we had the throws available, so that might generate some interest. The fundraiser with Gary Crocker, Dennis reached out to me, and the date we had originally looked at, that September 26th or whatever, the theater is still in residence, so we can't have the theater that weekend, which we thought would be great with the Apple Fest, but the next weekend, the Friday, October 3rd is available, so Gary is still good with that date, so we can do October 3rd for the fundraiser at Compton.
Put in
And
the messenger said.
I know, even though Dennis said he was gonna correct it. So I asked Dennis if he could cause Dennis was the one that said, oh, cause I filled out the paperwork to rent the hall, which, to use the hall that day. And then Dennis said, oh, the theater's still in residence, so why don't we move it and I'll make the edit in the messenger. And then he must have forgotten, but we'll have more time. I mean, it's 6 months out, so we'll have more time to make sure we have the right date to everybody. And we have another messenger between now and then too, so. But I think the big topic is to coordinate our work for this Thursday. The legislature will be hearing, or the committee will be hearing testimony for the wording change of that historic preservation bill. And Randy Greenwood had emailed me this morning, so I gave him your wording, and then I also forwarded him your Word copy. And Randy said to me after that, let's see. He said that he would reach out to Senator Hickman and try for that amendment language. So that is what he's hoping for, that we can change. It originally had read what Hickman had put in, nominated to the register by the commission or have been designated as a historic property by a municipal historic preservation ordinance. And then Steve had amended it to or comprehensive plan.
Yeah, recognize the comprehensive plan. That is historic.
Yes, and then you saw, I went into that, that was what I wanted to see, what it said with this new comp plan that we will be voting on. And under historic structures, so it talks about in the history section, the buildings that are on the historic register. And then it says, in addition to the above, there are a number of buildings which have previously been deemed eligible for listing on the historic register. And it says the stencil shop, the dairy barn and silo on 135, and the former Monmouth Academy. And so it says that in there. So I'm hoping that that's the wording that would cover us if it's in the comp plan.
Good.
So the other thing I did when I was at my meetings this weekend is I spoke to our legislative liaison who handles dental hygiene stuff and asked her where you go, because I've never been in the Cross building. But the thing that she also said to me was, you have 3 minutes and you need to bring 20 copies of what you're gonna say. So
Wow.
I didn't, I figured I'd pass that along. If anybody wants me to make photocopies of what you're gonna say.
And you're supposed to direct your comments on that letterhead. You're supposed to say an honorable so-and-so, I guess the chair of the committee, and then the vice chair of the committee, and then, anyways, we just did a thing for the Veterinary Association.
Oh, okay,
They had this whole thing that we had to cut and paste,
okay,
for the letterhead.
okay,
So, but you are right, 3 minutes and,
That's all we have is 3 minutes?
yes,
but you can breathe, and your letter could be longer,
Yeah.
yes.
And I think 3 minutes is all you're gonna need.
Yeah, I mean, I had 3 minutes to speak the other day and me being as long-winded as I am, I did have a script, and I was under 3 minutes. So even though I thought I was, and it was a full page, so, I think that I'm going to write something as well and I'll share it with everybody ahead of time, but I just wanted to coordinate with you two gentlemen if we're gonna, carpool and,
I have to come
Walk
up
in
from
there.
Falmouth,
Oh,
so
you
I
do?
probably wouldn't be able to.
okay.
I
So,
have to turn around and go back to Sabatis.
Oh,
I've got a
okay.
Budget meeting. It's-
okay,
We're done by then.
well, that's right, because I have a meeting that night. I have a Cumston Hall trustee meeting at 5, so that's the other thing. So,
5, oh geez.
and I guess that's what, if it's scheduled at 1, does that mean it goes off at 1?
No,
It just
no.
is,
We seem to be towards the bottom of what they're looking at. If they go in order of what's on. the
Yeah.
legislative-
That's what they did with the veterinary
Okay.
issue, and I didn't get up to speak until it was almost 4:30,
okay,
and we were there at 1, so.
yeah,
Are there 20 committee members sitting there? That's why we need 20 copies?
Well, yeah, they're supposed to be, but they come and go.
yeah.
So there are some vacant seats.
But I've got oodles of paper and
Okay.
I'm happy to print whatever. So if you get me what you want printed, I'll make, yes, if that's what you're gonna use, I'll make 20 copies of
I'll
that.
email you mine
And
too.
email me yours and I'll make 20 copies there.
Include a picture of Monmouth.
Yes, yeah, and that's what I was gonna do and have it
Are
on
you
my
speaking too?
paperwork. I was gonna write something to speak, so I'll have something written up and make sure that, we know that to have an ordinance, like you said, there's only 7% of the communities, that have ordinances
That's really surprising.
and it's all really bigger communities too. And
Yeah.
like Dr. Bougie said, people have a hard time sometimes when you start telling them what they can and can't do with their properties, so.
And there's a lot of misinformation
Yeah.
because, when we started trying to do something like that at the museum, people said, well, you're gonna not let me do this, you're not gonna let me do that. And we said, well, no, that's not true. But once the misinformation gets out there, you can't.
Oh, I know. Yeah, I know all about that. So, but it would be easier. That's why I didn't want to try to rush anything through to be on the warrant for June. If we do end up needing an ordinance, we'll have time to make sure we get something together and present it to be on voting in November, if we do end up having to go that route.
Hopefully
So,
we won't because.
yeah.
I can't imagine there being any opposition to it, would there, Steve? I mean,
The only one that might, this is the only one that would worry me is gonna be the main historic preservation
Yeah.
people will give us a hard time.
I wonder if they would really want to stick their necks out on this issue like that, but
I don't know.
well, that's one of the things that I'm going to say in my little spiel is that we, this building has gone through so many transformations in its life. For it to be historically accurate, we could never get it back there because the original stairs are gone. A lot of the original walls are gone in that 1914 edition. And, because it was a public school, we didn't have any control over the decisions that were made. We were just left with
Yep.
what the school had done to it. And to go back to an original structure would have been nearly impossible.
Yeah.
So I would have liked to have those original maple stairs that creaked and cracked and crunched when we went up the stairs, but they're gone. But it also would have really chopped up that entryway where now you have this beautiful
Right.
open entryway, but it didn't look like that. No, it didn't, but
in the bill that they wrote, they said they wanted to prioritize buildings that could be utilized by the most people.
yes.
And to do that, you've got to meet modern codes,
Exactly.
and there's none of those buildings would be eligible,
Yeah.
really, when you stop and think about it.
Exactly. So those were the things that I was going to write in my little
Yeah.
spiel and, we got what we got, and we're lucky that it was least salvageable.
Yeah, I'm surprised that, like, Hickman didn't reach out to someone like you know, to get better information on how they could word that.
Yeah,
So that more communities could be
Yeah,
eligible.
yeah,
well, I sent him this information, and that's the point I want to make, is that you have only 7% of the communities who have an ordinance and who, but there's hundreds of historic buildings in the state. And that may not be on the register, but you have to give all the communities in Maine an opportunity to apply for this funding.
Yeah.
They're limiting it
yeah,
to.
Southern Maine, really.
Yeah, no shit.
exactly. Yeah, so,
That's gonna be my pitch.
yeah,
I'll throw in Monmouth Academy. a little bit.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So if I might be late on Thursday. But I'll be there, but you can fill Linda in on the trees, because she never returned my phone call. I never talked to Linda about the trees, but anyway, so.
How much of the fence they take down? I didn't look.
Well, he ended up taking the gate, because I don't even know who has the padlock key to that gate. So he took the gate off of the post and set it aside, and then Tony took down essentially this stretch here. And, I know that there's some branches on that stretch down here, but we will, you know, I spoke to Justin, and we will get something back up there. You know, some chain link fence or something to prevent the people from sneaking into the fair. So, but, you know, it's such a messy, situation between the town, Compton Hall trustees, and the fair. You know, there's such a, you know, who, what, where, when, how, but essentially the town owns the property. Yes, the fair uses it, but the fair owns those buildings that are theirs, but we own the property. So there's this whole coordination about who has what and whose is what. And, but, you know, when it comes to putting up something, you know, we need to make sure that we're the ones that decide what goes there, not the fair.
So what happened? A tree fell on the building, the
Yes.
south side?
Yes, one of those pine trees that we were waiting to get cut down fell on like the beginning of March. And Jeff and I came up to look at the fence, and
Oh, my
the tree
gosh.
came down, and
Jeez.
the top of that tree.
Oh, my gosh.
So, you know, those are the trim boards that, and it came down, and look at where it is in regards to that window.
Jeez, you are right.
I'm like, what in the world? How did that not smash that window out? It was crazy. And then I called Steve and said, when
Wow.
did that happen? So that's where,
That's the
it
damage
hit.
room.
Yeah, yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Lucky.
yeah, yeah.
Those trees are gone now. which
But
is-
they're gone now. It looks so strange driving up the hill not to have that row of pines there. But then I was looking at those two pictures, and you compare the pines behind the one probably 1920 probably to, you know, 59 before the additions went on, and just how much those trees had grown in relation to the bell tower in that time. But now they're gone.
Good.
And
It's good riddance.
they were a danger, you know, for sure, but Spencer, you know, did a great job. And I met with him and Tony and talked about the fence and what we could or couldn't do, and taking it down and getting it out of the way, because Jeff finally looked at me and said, Chris, this is way above our pay grade. There's trees as big as our arm and leg grown into the chain link, and
Oh.
vines woven into the chain link. So there was no way Jeff and I were ever gonna be able to do it ourselves. So Tony had the town Public Works crew come up, and they used the loader and just pulled the chain link fence out. We tried to save the uprights so that we could reuse them
Yeah.
to put something back up in some way, shape, or form. But, you know, I had to go through 5 levels of people to accomplish that.
Who's responsible for the fencing?
I don't know who put it there in the first place, whether or not it was the town or the fair put it there.
Sure, the fair did.
I'm sure the fair probably did. That fence has been there. When we played football on that field, you always ran down through that gate, always. And that was in the 70s that I remember that fence being there. But who put it there, I can't say. I don't know, but who's gonna put it back up is us, because we're not going to let the Fair Association go hire somebody and then just hand us an invoice, because that doesn't make good sense. Because
No.
who knows what it could be, the invoice, so we'll be able to utilize, you know, the Public Works crew and just get a fence back up there to prevent them, but, and I think Jeff and I will probably, once the trees and this stuff is out of the way, we'll bring up our tractor and work on smoothing out the lawn, because whenever you do tree work, you're gonna have a mess on the sod and that, so we'll get that
Did
squared
he
away.
say today that he was gonna do something with all the grass and all the mess on the side? Like get it seeded? Cause they should be done working outside except for putting the top on, right?
I don't think that there was really any work left in that. I mean,
I
when
don't
they,
think they had any plan for that.
no, when they did the demo, they had to reseed that and cap that and clear it up. And the demo, I mean, did this section, but I think around the building,
We're gonna have to do that.
we'll have to do, yeah, we'll, you know, between lawn tractors and everything, Jeff and I we've got a lot of implements, so we can at least get it smoothed out and get things squared away. So out back is another whole story because of the pitch of that and how that's gonna have to have some serious attention once it's done, but on the back of the that'll be on the back of the building,
I
so.
thought you were gonna write for a grant for, landscaping grant or something like that.
Yeah, when we were talking about doing something at
Right.
trails,
Yeah.
uh, that was gonna go through the Department of Conservation.
Yeah.
Same people doing the trail,
Yeah.
Yeah,
but that's gonna have to come later.
that'll have to come later, yeah. I think, you know, the big thing is just get us inside the
done.
building.
Yes,
And then
yes.
we'll work at the other exciting stuff afterwards, and hopefully, you know, there'll be something else, so. But other than that, I don't have anything else, and if, you know, we'll communicate this week and
Yeah.
figure out our plan for
Just send me
Thursday.
a text. or
Yeah,
email.
exactly. And, I'll get copies made and all of that, and,
I'll email you mine and
Yeah.
then.
yep, and, I'll bring them along with me and, then we'll make a plan to meet and get that done. If Michael Goble Baines is there to shoot us down yet again, I might have to pull his ponytail,
Well,
but,
he won't like what I have to say. After that,
so,
you know,
hopefully he
I have
doesn't,
a lot of respect for him.
hopefully he
Well, I
doesn't
think
show
the
up.
governor's office will send someone, because they did for the veterinary bill, you know.
Really?
And the governor's office made a recommendation too,
Okay.
so.
I think the nice thing is that when you look at that, bill tracking, the people that are supporting it,
Yeah.
that were listed on the left, it's bipartisan.
That's right,
There's Republicans, Democrats, this,
right.
like an equal dose of both, so, you know,
And everyone's gonna want a chance for their town to get something.
exactly,
Absolutely.
yeah. So I'm hoping that, you know, we've got some support for that. And,
I think we will.
and Randy was happy to write what we needed, because he was getting his part written
Yeah.
up, so.
Good.
So I think that we'll see that, because he knows that Monmouth doesn't have an ordinance, so. Or he figured Monmouth didn't have an ordinance, and I confirmed that, so. But other than that, that's all I have for an update on that. Nothing really from the select board. The dollar amount is on the warrant for for heat and, little bit of electricity, it's under $8,500, so, we'll just have to do some PR work leading up to June to hope that, tell everybody to vote to approve that,
Yeah.
so. Do you have anything else, Steve, for,
Not at this point, I gotta go back. Look,
yeah,
figure out, like, I think I have several other things out there.
Yeah.
The building one from Community Foundation.
Yes.
They changed one of their funders to just building, and
okay,
I got that out there,
okay.
and that hopefully we'll hear. And
Did you
Stephen
have a
King.
chance to talk to John Simcoe?
Not yet. I actually had him in the office a few weeks ago on other stuff.
Yeah,
But I'm gonna,
Yeah.
his car is sitting at the desk.
yes,
I plan on hitting him up. I'm going back to Kennebec Savings.
yeah,
Going back to Bangor City.
yeah,
So look for some more.
Yeah.
I need to find a big money
yes,
provider. That's the thing.
yeah, yeah. So hopefully I've got my fingers crossed for Thursday, so.
Yeah, that's
And see
a
how
big one.
that goes. So my question with that, after we give testimony, do they make a decision or does it go back into committee? How does that
I'd
work?
go back into committee for further discussion, like
Okay.
a workshop.
Yeah,
But again, I just think that because it was not, when we voted, the voters
Yes.
did not read where it said it had to be in the national
yeah, because
register.
it didn't say that anywhere on it, so.
So anyways, but it might go back into committee, but I
Mhm.
think if, where it's bipartisan, I think it'll be okay.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, comprehensive plans go through a huge vetting problem. I mean,
Yes.
It's done by citizens.
yeah,
It goes back to the public for voting.
yeah,
I mean, it's almost as good as an ordinance.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So I really want to emphasize that.
Good, and you're the one that can do that.
Yeah.
So.
yeah. Does anybody have anything else they wanted to go over? No? So. The next meeting. So whether or not we do May 5th or the 12th. And there's the Compton, not that I need to be there, Compton User Group is that night on May 12th, but May 5th is the week before the select board meeting. I'll just double check town and make sure if there's anything in May. No, I reserved a date in May. So the 5th and the 12th are both open.
Do the 5th.
You want to do the 5th? And Andrew, do I need to, did Dawn already email you the Nickerson and O'Day thing for you to sign or not?
No, I haven't received anything.
Okay, so I will text her and ask her if she, because I only had a photocopy of it, so I'll ask her to send those both to the town office and to you so that they can get signed and approved, so,
Yes, perfect.
okay, all right.
I kind of lost it.
They pretty much can
Both the 5th and the
they're
12th.
gonna assemble it on the ground.
Yeah.
Okay, so why don't we go with the
And then they're
6th?
gonna pick it up and hold it up there. Make
Perfect,
sure it's perfect the day before.
Yeah.
That way, when everybody's here with the photos and all that kind of stuff, it'll just come up and go plunk in one piece.
And how do they attach with bolts?
yeah,
The legs are gonna come down. Existing legs come down like this, and he's gonna shiplap the legs. So the old posts are gonna come down and look like this.
and then
And
use
then
this.
he's gonna put that metal plate on this side, and run bolts through
Right.
Through it.
to
Okay.
anchor it together.
Yeah.
That's what I'm picking up from what he said.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what makes sense to me, because when we.
Kind of
moved-
lost it.
Yeah,
Yeah, when we built our post and beam house, how do you put into your sill plate, but you don't want them just sitting into the sill
Yeah.
plate. So that's what we did. We used steel plates and lags. And,
What house is this?
the house that I lived in Winthrop that we built from scratch and cut down trees and yes, and we had cranes flying in whole sides of post and beam all put together. So, yeah. So,
Want the Amish?
yeah, well, the Amish weren't anywhere in Maine when we were doing that. So, gosh. Yeah, it didn't go up as quick as an Amish building either, but, yeah. So, any public comment? All right, so. Yes, but I'm not sure, Mark's not raising his hand or saying anything like that. So we'll make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
All
second
right. So exactly at